Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Break Free of Good Girl Brainwashing. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, BMO, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to just launch a couple polls to see how everyone in the room is doing today. So this one's going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? And I'll give it just a couple moments for everyone to submit a response here. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. Share these results. Looks like optimism is in the lead, but definitely have some feelings of surviving and anxiety in the audience. I'm very confident that our conversation today might help with some of those feelings. So I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch that second poll. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? And this one tells us just a little bit more about your current needs as an entrepreneur so that we can continue to provide relevant programming to all of you. Awesome. We got folks from Texas, Maryland, New Jersey, Michigan, California, West Virginia, Missouri, Georgia, North Dakota, North Carolina, Arkansas. Welcome, everyone. Super exciting to have you all here. Trinidad and Tobago, welcome. So exciting. Awesome. I'm going to end this poll and share these results. All right. It looks like finance is in the lead, sales and marketing coming up close behind, but looks like we have some needs all across the board. So thank you. We will take this into account for future programming. I'm going to stop sharing this poll, and without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our special guest, Lisa Carmen Wang, founder and CEO of Bad Bitch Empire and author of the Bad Bitch Business Bible, 10 Commandments to Break Free of Good Girl Brainwashing and Take Charge of Your Body, Boundaries, and Bank Account. The book is available as of today and is currently Amazon's #1 new release in private equity. Lisa, we are so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Oop, you're on mute.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Michelle. I'm so excited to be here and bring some bad bitch energy into this beautiful Tuesday. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about all the things and help alleviate some of that anxiety and bring more optimism into the world.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, do you want to just tell everyone a little bit, just like, who are you, and a little bit about you?
Of course. So my name is Lisa Carmen Wang, and I'm the author of the new book, The Bad Bitch Business Bible, and the founder of the Bad Bitch Empire. We are an investment community and venture fund investing in female-led businesses, overturning the status quo and taking our share of the $100+ trillion of global assets under management. I started my career, really my first career was as a national champion gymnast. So I was a gymnast on the US team for 10 years. And I consider that my really the backbone of who I am, because that career taught me one of the most important skills that I brought with me into being an entrepreneur and also being an investor, which was the ability to fall and get back up again. Because there's nothing like the humiliation and shame and just pain of falling physically in front of thousands of people and finding the strength within yourself to say, okay, I need to put a smile on my face, get back up, and the show must go on. And that is that resilience, that tenacity, that grit is the same thing that I really relied on when I took the leap from corporate finance into being an entrepreneur, when I didn't know how to incorporate a business, didn't know anybody in venture capital, didn't know anything really about entrepreneurship. And as I think many of the entrepreneurs here know, just surviving the ups and downs and just getting back up over and over again is what really counts at the end of the day. And then also as an investor. So now I invest in female-led businesses. I focus on areas where women are creating massive impact in everything from healthcare to education. I genuinely believe that the next wave of billion-dollar companies is going to be created by women for women. And, same thing with investing. Things don't always work out, things go down, but they always go back up if you just continue to put the right energy and intention out there.
Love it. And I think that's something that just like any entrepreneur in the audience can relate to on some level. We've all had those kind of moments where we've fallen down, in whatever respect, and we need to get back up and keep going with the business, as a leader. So that's really, really awesome. So just to start out, what exactly is good girl brainwashing, and why have so many women, including yourself, fallen victim to a good girl mindset that holds back their potential?
So, good girl brainwashing is all of the societal and media messages that have trained women to play small, be silent, and stay subordinate to the status quo. So, it causes us to do things like doubt ourselves, have imposter syndrome, become people pleasers, be overly polite, overly humble, and to never advocate for ourselves and never really stand up and call things out. And so, the toxicity of good girl brainwashing is really that it is so ingrained in so much of what we consider to be a quote unquote appropriate, nice woman. And I think that every woman here has experienced what I call the small paper cuts, which are everything from being overlooked, undervalued, assumed as inferior, and these little things wear down on us, and usually we don't really speak up. We just take the disrespect, right? We take the underpay, we take the lack of funding. And there is a point at which every good girl realizes that the same behavior that served her when she was younger, so again, following the rules, being obedient, seeking external validation, getting good grades, doing a good job, working overtime, all these things that she was rewarded for in the beginning that maybe did get her into a good school, got her into a good job, that when she goes into this next stage where it says, I'm going to go from, I want to be a leader. I want to be successful. Like I want to get to that next stage in my life. The same behaviors that served her as a good girl are actually now very detrimental to her as a woman who has big goals, big dreams and aspirations because of these good girl habits like perfectionism, people pleasing, over politeness, not speaking up, not advocating for yourself, and really settling for a version of yourself that is not who you could truly be. And so this transition from good girl to bad bitch is really first and foremost a recognition and awareness that this is happening to you, that you have some of these, what I call good girl voices inside of you, which really aren't your own authentic voices. So those are the voices of your parents, your teachers, society, everyone who's basically told you to be, a nice, quiet, good girl.
Yeah.
And I define a bad bitch as a woman who unapologetically takes charge of her body, her boundaries, and her bank account. And a bad bitch knows what she wants, and she gets what she wants every damn time.
I love it. I love it. And just to like dive a little bit deeper, because I think there could be some people who are maybe like, oh, well, like I make sure not to like absorb that kind of content nowadays, or like I don't surround myself with people. But like, can you talk a little bit more about like some of the nuanced ways that these messages kind of show up in our lives?
Yeah. So, I mean, it comes from everything, like just even the use of the word bitch, right? So I'd like to dive into the term bitch and how it has originally been bastardized, because it's been used to describe a woman who is cold and rude and aggressive and pushy and selfish. And really, what that woman is a woman who knows her worth, does not tolerate disrespect, says what's on her mind, has opinions, and is willing to walk away from people who don't see her value and disrespect her. She has boundaries. She knows her worth. She knows her value. And so, what we've effectively done with the word bitch is that we have weaponized a woman's power against her by making her feel ashamed of having strong boundaries, ashamed of prioritizing ourselves, ashamed of putting ourselves and our dreams first. And this is where I think a lot of the conversation around women feeling burnt out right now and feeling like, oh, I can't have it all. Like I have to sacrifice myself. I can't speak up for myself. I can't have needs. And I think that's just really, really unfortunate, because we're starting to train women that we have to be martyrs, right?
Mhm.
Whether that's originally it was around motherhood, and now it's really around, okay, if you want to be successful in your business, that means you must sacrifice all these other things because you still have to put yourself last.
Right. Right. So like just I'm curious a little bit about how you kind of like have come to like these definitions for these terms. So like can you maybe share some of like the transformative moments and experiences in your own life that have kind of led you to discover your inner bad bitch, and kind of what the impact has been of embracing this empowered persona in your life?
Yeah. So I have the book with me here, and I have so many of those moments. And it's really so even within the book, I talk about all of my good girl mistakes, all of those moments that really made me look at myself in the mirror and wonder, like, is this really the best, most authentic, most powerful version of me? And I think we've all had those moments where we either don't speak up, we stay silent, we take some BS and we let someone cross our boundaries. And then later we're like, why did I allow that to happen? Why didn't I speak up for myself? Why didn't I speak up for, someone else? And I think that, I mean, there's so many moments. The first time was really when I left my corporate job, and I really, I started out in Wall Street, and it was a great job, and everyone said it was a golden opportunity, and like people would kill for this job. And I really listened to my own feelings, which I had learned to numb my feelings for the sake of success, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're not tired. You're not hungry. You're just keep working. And I, for the first time, really listened to myself, and I was like, I'm just not happy. And I don't think that this is how I'm going to fulfill my potential and my purpose. And so when I told my parents that I wanted to leave this very good job, they thought I was crazy. And they're like, well, why do you want to leave? And I was like, well, I'm just not happy.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's that simple.
Yeah. And I think that part of this is really just about simplifying what it means to be yourself and to listen to yourself, and to notice the moments in which that little voice that says like, I don't think this is right for me, or I don't feel good doing this, that's actually your bad bitch voice trying to come out and say like, no, like there's so much more here. And then of course, I think there's the moments, like the difficult moments that I've had to overcome, like, harassment in the workplace and trusting people that I probably shouldn't have trusted. And I talk about that in a whole chapter called A Bad Bitch Calls Out Bullshit. And how difficult it is, especially as a young woman who has a lot of potential, who's smart, and there are people who may not have the best intentions in helping you, in quote unquote helping you. And so it's really about having strong boundaries and like listening to those moments of discomfort when situations don't feel right either, and then how you can really call it out, and how you can support other women in those situations. And then of course there's, I think the other thing about being a bad bitch is like this ability to dream big. And I think that one of the challenges with good girl brainwashing that is also very detrimental is because it causes us to doubt ourselves so much and to question whether we are truly capable and to be perfectionists. We're so busy getting ready. We're so busy perfecting the last detail. And again, this goes for everything from negotiation to fundraising to, creating your product and your pitch deck. It's like we're so focused on being perfect, and money doesn't flow to perfection. Money flows towards power.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to build a successful business, you need to find that part of you and there's an emotion here that I think women have not been able to tap into, and that's the emotion of anger. You need to be able to tap into something in yourself that is actually really, really pissed off about how you have been underpaid, you haven't been funded, that women only receive 2% of funding, that nothing's changing. And that anger can become this incredible fuel that you can transmute into passion, into purpose, and into power. And that is then allows you to dream much bigger because you're focused on, this is the big problem I want to solve. This is the big thing that I want to change. And I don't need to outsource my worth to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is so important, especially because I know we have, entrepreneurs in the audience who've kind of like come from a corporate lifestyle into the, purpose-driven work that they're now doing as a founder. And to just kind of, I think for some entrepreneurs, like that corporate pathway that they were once on was kind of like built from the expectations of other people and those around them. And, a lot of times it comes down to that point of like, oh, it just didn't make me happy. And, using that as kind of fuel as well, alongside this kind of like, I'm not going to fit into the box of what other people kind of wanted me to fit into or expected me to fit into. Like, this is who I truly am, and I'm going to set those boundaries, and you can kind of take it or leave it. So I love that. So kind of thinking about your experience, you talked about, you're a 4-time USA national champion gymnast. How did that experience help prepare you in your career as an entrepreneur and investor? And what are some of the skills and attributes you kind of gained through that time that have contributed to your success as an entrepreneur and investor?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it already, but I think some of the biggest things are definitely resilience and tenacity. But I think in addition to that, so I started gymnastics when I was 9 years old. And when I was 9 years old, I signed up for just, a gymnastics summer camp and fell in love with it. And pretty soon after that, I set a goal for myself, a 10-year goal when I was 9 years old. And I said, I want to be a champion. I want to be an Olympic level gymnast, and I want to be the best.
Yeah.
And I was at no point was I ever the most talented gymnast. And there were many girls who could have very well been number one over and over again. But I was definitely the hardest working one.
Mhm.
And I think it's a testament to hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that is something that even today, when I look at, I mean, thank God I didn't have social media back then because that would have been so difficult. But now, I mean, we're bombarded with comparison. We're bombarded with everybody's successes, and it's so hard not to compare ourselves. And I
Totally.
think that it is really important to kind of have that tunnel vision and to choose the big goal, the big bad bitch dream that you want to accomplish, and just set your sights on that and choose a handful of people that you want to listen to. Like, don't scroll and listen to everyone's opinion because it is going to just be there. And but yeah, choose a few voices that you feel empowered by, that you feel excited by, and just unapologetically go towards that.
Mhm. And I love that kind of like hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I think that's just so true, especially when thinking about these entrepreneurs in our audience who are kind of, you know, building something up from nothing, and it's been sparked from that true passion that they have inside, or some issue that they care so deeply about. So I think that's just a really good mindset to hold on to, just long term, as your business evolves. So you know thinking about money, building a healthy relationship with money is a goal that many entrepreneurs aspire to achieve, if not all. How can you make your relationship with money as healthy as a relationship with, someone like a closest friend? And what are some practical steps and strategies that entrepreneurs can implement to cultivate such a relationship?
Yeah. So the metaphor that I like to share is to think about your relationship to money, like your relationship, like a personal relationship, in which if you have a healthy relationship, then the two of you are nurturing each other, you are helping each other grow, you want the other person to be successful, so you give them space to evolve and grow and you invest in them. Now, in a toxic relationship, you are perhaps afraid that you're going to lose them. And so you're jealous, you're possessive, you like hold on to them and you're like, suffocate them. You're like, don't leave the house, like, don't see other people. Or you're like hot and cold and avoidant. And you're like, okay, I don't really want to deal with this. And so you don't communicate. That's what it's like with money. So in a good relationship with money, you have good communication, you check up on it, you invest it into different asset classes so it can grow. In a toxic relationship with money, you're like, I'm hoarding it in a savings account, I'm afraid to lose it, I don't want to spend it. Or you recklessly spend it and you avoid looking at your statements, you avoid looking at your bank accounts because it gives you anxiety. And so that means you need to take a really long, hard look at your relationship with money and ask yourself, like, do I really have a healthy relationship with money? Or is there something that is creating a toxic relationship? And if there is some toxicity, then it really is important to always go back to the roots. And I am a big fan of thinking like this whole book, by the way, is basically like a psychological philosophy book that to dig out all the subconscious voices that are not serving you and those self-sabotaging thoughts. And I call them the financial fictions. And financial fictions are the stories that are in your mind that are causing you to create a negative or toxic relationship with money, and that usually comes from childhood. And so what's important first and foremost is to think through, what is your very first memory of money? And what did that develop in you? So for example, my very first memory of money was clipping coupons with my mom on Sunday mornings in the newspapers, like just scrounging for deals. And then whenever we went shopping, I would be in charge of the coupons and I'd be like digging for the coupons and being like, okay, we can save $1 on this. And I felt so proud when I saw the cashier, just type that in and then we'd get like a reduced price. And that when I realized that was like, I looked back and I discovered that my issue was that I learned to have gratitude for money, but I also learned to have fear for spending. And I knew the value of money, but I didn't know the value of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And what that meant is I have a tendency to overwork, to think that I have to do 10 times more to earn $1.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of women have this. We are conditioned to work 2 times as hard for half the pay. And so when you add on the conditioning of being a woman, and then you add on the conditioning of being an immigrant and not being wealthy growing up, all of those really created a toxic relationship that I had with money, where I just eventually started avoiding it. And I was like, I don't like dealing with this because it gives me anxiety. And I feel like I should be making more because I'm working so hard, but why is this not coming? And so I think that money and worth and wealth are so tightly intertwined, which is why the Bad Bitch Empire. So I don't know if there's a link here for everyone, but the Bad Bitch Empire is all about helping women build unapologetic worth and wealth. And so this is what my coaching, my programs are always centered on, is this in order to, the energy of money is more important for you to deal with, because if you've always struggled with money, there is no one tactic that is going to change everything if you don't realize how to change your mind and change your energetic relationship with wealth and with your self-worth.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's so important. And I've honestly never really thought about like what my first memory with money is. And I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but I think that's so true, how those experiences in childhood really do shape your perspective on those parts of life. But I love this analogy of, thinking about money as like a close friend, because I think we can all kind of relate to that to some degree, somewhere on, that spectrum of either, kind of like avoiding or kind of like taking advantage versus kind of like investing and nurturing that relationship. And so kind of like being able to identify, your strong areas and your weak areas when it comes to your relationship with money, and, just get really honest with yourself. I think it is another thing that you can kind of do when you're thinking about, those early experiences that you had with money and how they shaped you. So I love that.
And I have a whole 4 chapters on the bank account section in the book. So it's like that goes through actionable stuff in terms of like everything from thinking about budgeting to making your first investments to angel investing, investing in female-led businesses, which is what I really care about, and how anybody can really get started with that and make that an integral part of their investment and wealth building strategy.
Love it. Awesome. And so, thinking about this a little bit more, negotiating and commanding one's worth is a critical skill for entrepreneurs, especially for women aiming to kind of overcome gender inequalities in the workplace. So could you maybe discuss some of the strategies or techniques that women can employ when negotiating and kind of commanding one's worth?
Yeah. So, I mean, at a very basic level, you absolutely need to do your research, understand industry benchmarks. I have a whole host of questions to ask yourself in terms of like how to do the research on the company, on the client. The one big difference. So I'll share one specific tactic that I use, and it has made a big difference in my work, especially as an entrepreneur. And so when you're doing consulting and, it's like you have full control over your pricing, is that I call it your bad bitch benchmark. And whatever you think your hourly rate is. So I want everyone for a moment to like ask yourself, what is your hourly rate that you charge? Okay. If you have that in your mind. And your bad bitch benchmark is that number doubled. That is what you're actually worth. And the reason for that is over 60% of women never negotiate the first offer when they start their jobs. And over the course of our career, if you continue not demanding your worth, not commanding and asserting your value, you become exponentially, you are getting paid exponentially less than the guy
Yeah.
next to you who's doing the same amount of work, maybe less amount of work. And you are doubling the amount of work that you're doing, right? You're putting in even more effort. And it is very, very likely that you are making, by a certain point, half of what that man is making. And so, especially when it comes to consulting and entrepreneurship, and like you think about the different types of services, you could have marketing services worth $2,000, and then the next person could have marketing services worth $20,000.
Right.
And it's really, what is the value to the person that you're serving, the company that you're serving? If you are solving a critical problem that they need solved, then, or let's say if you're an entrepreneur, if you are genuinely creating a company where you believe that you can return that investor 10x the money that they're going to invest in there, then it is in your interest to be confident about how much you are charging, so long as you know that you can deliver the value.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a really great kind of like just benchmark to have in your head, especially because a lot of entrepreneurs, especially like first time founders, don't really have any framework to go off of, and kind of just thinking about like, how do I know what I'm worth? Like, oh, let me do research and kind of like look at other businesses or entrepreneurs doing similar things. But it can still be hard to kind of like make a determination. So I think that's just so important to like recognize that, like, as a woman or as a person of color in this country, you are, most likely not getting paid as much as your male or white counterparts. So just really important to recognize that you are worth more than whatever that current level is that you're at, and just always aspiring for that, and not really giving up. So I love that.
Yeah. And negotiations don't have to be confrontational. They are conversations about value exchange. And
Totally.
it is in both parties' interest to get a win-win. So I think approaching it not as something like, I have to prepare myself for this, and versus like,
Right.
I know I've done good work. I'm going to bring in a bullet point of what I bring to the table, and I'm going to state what my value is. And also, I will reemphasize this, the energetics of this, because I'm a big proponent of this, because I talk about bad bitch energy in the book. And there's the opposite of that is insecure good girl energy. And we have all met women, and we might see this in ourselves too. When you see a woman who's insecure, you can smell it. You can see it in her body language, the way she speaks, because a lot of her speech is permission asking. It's permission asking and submissive body language and energy. And so you can reek of that energy when you don't know your value. And so I think it's actually more important to do the core inner work so that you can show up to those conversations knowing to your core what you're worth and what your value is, and not have to fake it. Because so it's you can't fake it. And this is why I say, like, it's not about the tactics of negotiations. You can teach someone all the tactics in the world, but at the end of the day, if they don't feel like they're good enough, someone else can see that.
Totally. Yeah, I love it. So thinking more about your own life, in your professional life as a woman of color and growing up in an Asian immigrant household, how did the pressure to succeed impact your professional and your personal life? And how have these experiences kind of shaped your career choices, your approach to leadership, and your perspective on diversity, equity, inclusion?
My biggest good girl habit is definitely perfectionism. And it is not something that is totally cured in me, because I am a high achiever. And so to
Sure.
all the fellow type A perfectionists, I get it. But I think that growing up in a immigrant and Asian households, there are a lot of pressures to be successful, a lot of pressure to make sure that the sacrifices that your parents made for you are not done in vain. And so a lot of the traditional things about wanting to get to an Ivy League school, wanting to get a good Wall Street job, just like following the ladder. And of course, as gymnasts, like getting the gold medal gymnasts, getting the gold medals in gymnastics. And so all of those really contributed to a type of even more intense good girl brainwashing, where I really outsourced my worth to other people's opinions. And if you think of a sport like gymnastics, it's literally the most intense training you could get to, where they're constantly telling you you're not skinny enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not good enough, you're not skilled enough. Like, it's just berating you every single day, and telling you how you're not good enough. And then someone else literally gives you a score on your level of perfection and or lack thereof. And so I think that was something that was just really, this is probably because I had such an extreme experience that I realized how important it was to break free of it, because it was suffocating. Because even though you can be externally successful, you can get all the accolades, all the awards, all the job titles, you can even get the money, but no matter how much there is out there, there was still, at least for me, a feeling of, I still don't feel good enough. Internal lack. And I discovered that very early on. And I actually, my first podcast was called Enoughness. And it was the question of, when is it ever going to be enough? When am I ever going to feel like I'm enough? And I started interviewing all these very successful people, and I asked them, do you feel like you're good enough? And turns out no one really feels like they're good enough. So we just all cope with it differently. And the biggest thing with women, so the biggest difference between how women and men manifest the lack of enoughness is that when a man doesn't feel like he's enough, he does something very different. So I'll start with a woman. When a woman doesn't feel like she's enough, she shows it in her body language, because she's been told that you are not enough. You are not enough in your being, you are not pretty enough, skinny enough, smart enough, brave enough, skilled enough. So she wears that in her body language, right? She shrinks. She takes up less space. Now, on the other hand, a man has been told a slightly different message, and he's been told, you don't have enough. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough cars. You don't have enough women. You don't have enough property, whatever it is. And so a man does the most insecure man does the opposite thing, and he physically expands. He takes up more space, right? Because he needs to show that he has everything, but deep down there's still a extreme lack, and he has all the money, all the things, and it's like, why am I still depressed? The unfortunate thing is that the business world rewards a man's insecure behavior, and it punishes a woman's insecure behavior. And this is why it's so important for us to really notice that, because the business world does not help us, does not support us in that transition. And so,
no, and I think that just goes to show that, like, you not every, in your journey as an entrepreneur, you're not always going to see eye to eye with the people that you interact with, and you have to kind of stand your ground and, like, know that to your core, like you were saying, that like what you're doing is the right thing, and what you're saying is the right thing, and that what your boundaries that you really believe like are really steadfast. So I think that's just super important when it comes to entrepreneurs having like conversations with partners, potential investors or lenders or whoever it may be. Really, really important.
And I would also add, just very tactically, for anyone who is seeking money in some way, whether you are like primarily if you're fundraising. So now that I am on the investor side, I do see the difference, and it is like having sat on both sides of the table, in which, again, a lot of women come to the table, and when you are not secure in your own worth, when you are not secure in your business model, when you are not so confident in your numbers, it is very hard for an investor to take a chance on you. And it does not matter how much passion you have. If you don't know your business, an investor's not going to invest in you, because at the end of the day, an investor is not investing in if they like you. They're investing in, do I believe that if I invest in you, and I put 100K in, that's going to turn into 10 million.
Right.
Right. It's a numbers game. So I think that's the other thing for women to really think, like, try to take it a little less personally. Like the money is, the amount of money in your bank account is not a reflection of your value as a human being, as a woman, as anything. It is simply how you're doing business.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. So it's like, do I as an investor think the number one thing is I want to turn my dollar into 10. Do I believe you're going to turn my dollar into 10? I might really like you as a person. I might think you're so passionate. I might really love your vision for the world. But if I don't think you're going to turn my dollar into 10, I'm not going to invest in you.
Yep. But yeah. And we do talk about that a lot in our community, of kind of just like, you have to believe in yourself for someone else to believe in you. And I think that's so important going into these conversations of just like, before you kind of are interacting with, investors or lenders or whoever it may be, to just like really do all the research, really know how to talk about all sides of your business, and kind of just know your story as an entrepreneur, and that you're something that you kind of are really confident in yourself and your business. I love that. So we've talked a little bit about kind of, investing in women-led companies. So just to dive a little bit deeper, can you talk about why that's so important, and kind of what this ripple effect looks like in terms of broader societal implications when women are actively investing in entrepreneurship, by women?
So right now, there are over $100 trillion of assets under management, of which women control and manage less than 1% of that. So that's $100 trillion in hedge funds, private equity funds, venture capital funds, and 1% barely are female fund managers. And that's why we can talk about empowerment all day. But at the end of the day, if you are not controlling the money, you cannot control the decisions. And it starts with worth, right? It starts with confidence. And that's why we emphasize this so much. It's like, you have to believe that you're worthy of it first. And then the moment you believe you're worthy of it, and then you have to unapologetically go secure the bag. And the stats that we always hear is that women command less than 2% of all funding, women of color, 0.2% of all venture funding. And we lament the fact that, like, men should be investing, like, which they should. However, they're not. It's just the reality, and we can try all day. And at the end of the day, we need more female check writers, and we need women to change the relationship with money, and realize that if you aren't investing your money, first and foremost, you are losing money every day if it's sitting in a savings account, because the inflation rate is greater than the savings rate. So you might think that it's safe, but it's like, you may as well be burning $1 or 10 or 100 every day. And there are many different ways to invest, but I think that the most powerful way to invest is to invest in a diversified asset class, and in which you can maximize wealth and impact. So I invest my money in female-led startups and female-led businesses. And so there are now opportunities where you can invest in small female, like small women-led businesses. And rather than having to wait 10 years for returns, so that's where startups come in, right? Venture and angel investors, we invest, and maybe 5-10 years later, you get like a massive return on the really successful ones. But there's now also like small business loans, right? On sites where you can put money into so I'm actually looking at investment in a donut shop by a woman that I'm really excited about. And the terms of the investment are that you get back 1.4x your investment. Meaning, if I put in $1,000, I will get 1,400 back.
Right.
And I didn't do anything. right? But the return horizon is like a year.
Okay.
If they hit their revenue goals. So there's many, many alternative ways to be investing, where you could be investing in real estate. You can be investing in female-led businesses. You could be investing in startups. And there are now ways to do that online very easily. It's just that that information has not been shared with women yet. And that is what I share with women in the Bad Bitch Empire, which is really like, you can build wealth. Like, you can be building your business and simultaneously building wealth. And when we do that, as women, we tend to invest in things that are impact driven. We tend to invest in things that actually are good for the community. We tend to be building companies that are additive to society and creating good in the world. And so that's like, why wouldn't we be investing in those things? Because at the end of the day, that's also how men get rich, right? Men get rich because Joe has a company that he wants to start. And Joe says, hey, John, you want to invest in my company? And John says, yeah, sure. How much? And he puts it in. But then John realizes that in order for him to make more money off of Joe, he needs to get his friends involved. So then John goes and gets Tom, Tim, and Bob into the round. And he says, hey guys, let's go into Joe's company, because if there's enough capital in there, then Joe has a much higher likelihood of success. He's going to pay them back. Everyone's going to make more money. And as women, we have been taught the opposite, again, that there's only enough room for one woman at the top, that there's not enough money to go around. The amount of women that I meet who feel like money is a scarce resource, right? There is so much money in the world, and we just have to harness it. And it's like, if it's not from this pocket, it's going to be from that pocket. It's going to be from there. It's like somewhere that money is going to come in, if we're doing the work. And if we actually are creating great businesses, women tend to be much more responsible business owners, which is also why I invest in female business owners. They're not going to just take the money and go gamble it. And yeah, so in general, I think it's an extremely powerful wealth building tool. It's an extremely powerful impact driving tool. And it's a vote for the types of the leaders, the diverse leaders in the future that we want to build. And just as it's important to invest in to vote for community leaders and local officials and government officials, your dollar is a vote for the type of future that you want to create for yourself and for others.
Right. Yeah, I think this is all so true. And, just thinking about how entrepreneurs and just people in general, sometimes, as women, we can forget like the power that our money can have, and sometimes think like, oh, it won't actually like make that much of a difference, or just like undervaluing the impact that those decisions can have, not only for yourself and your business potentially, but for just like the broader landscape for women entrepreneurs, especially as we're kind of like doing this as a collective. And if we, kind of decide that, okay, yes, like we're going to invest more dollars into these women-led businesses, eventually over time, we will start to see those changes, and just kind of like believing that like your dollar does matter in that effort. So I think that's super important.
Yeah. Is it possible to do a poll just to understand like, what are the participants most interested in learning about? Is it investing in female-led businesses? Is it building your own business, or is it fundraising for your business?
Yeah, if you want to throw that in the chat, investing, building, or funding.
Or fundraising.
Fundraising.
Yeah.
You feel free to sound off in the chat and we can get some insights. But yeah, I guess as that's coming in, okay, we see investing, building, investing, fundraising, building and fundraising, building and fundraising. Okay, so we got a mixture here. We got a good mix. I'm seeing a lot of building and fundraising for sure.
Yes, I love when it's building and investing. So I see Luz does that because a lot of times when you're building, you do want to fundraise. So they kind of go hand in hand. But I love so there is now a massive opportunity. So this is what male entrepreneurs do too. It's like, while they're building, they're also investing. So like while Joe's building his company, he's also investing in John's company. And so it is an additional income stream where you're not doing any additional work. And so that's going back to my own financial fiction of working myself to the ground and always thinking that harder work equals more money. It's not
Mhm.
true. Investing is the only type of work you can do where you are not adding additional work, that your money is working for you. And that is, and in particular, the reason why I love investing in female-led businesses is like, it feels more tangible. It's hands-on, right? You can go visit that donut shop and I
Mhm.
can speak to that female founder versus just being like, okay, I'm going to invest in the stock market and like another
Right.
ETF, like Vanguard. And like, that's what everyone's doing. And honestly, you don't need, you don't need that much education to do that. Just like open up an account and then put some money into the main ETF. If anything, there's even AI, betterment.com, wealthfront.com. I use both to
Right.
automate my investings into the stock market. But the other time where I actually get to use my brain and get to use what I'm passionate about is in like finding really great companies to invest in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's just super interesting, kind of thinking about like, okay, like a lot of men are doing like kind of like the building and investing, and there's no reason why you can't do the same as well. They're not like mutually exclusive. So just really considering that. I love it. So I guess to close out, kind of as an homage to the title of your book, how can women use the word bitch to kind of reclaim their power? And how have you seen women successfully harness this word to kind of challenge stereotypes or assert themselves, or promote gender equality in the workplace?
Yeah. So I had a conversation earlier today. I interviewed my good friend Cindy Gallup, who's also on the back of this book, and I'm just going to read her testimonial for it as she is a OG bad bitch. And she says, "Want to dump self-doubt in the trash, set firm boundaries, design the life you want to lead, and make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money. This is your Bible." That's what it says on the back of the Bad Bitch Business Bible. And that's why, it's, if you don't want the self trash, if you want the boundaries, if you want to design the life that you want, if you want to feel free and authentic, it has never served us. I was talking to a number of women. So Cindy, she is in her 60s, and I've been talking to women who are older, and they talk about how, yeah, like really conforming and being a good girl got them nowhere. It really got you nowhere. So she said, when in doubt, be a bad bitch. And I think it's just reclaiming the fact that that is not a negative word.
Yeah.
Reclaiming the fact that standing up for yourself, knowing your worth, calling out bullshit, walking away from people who disrespect you, who don't value you. And like that is an act of self-love. And in a world that feeds off your insecurity, loving yourself is an act of rebellion. And remember that, right? Your opinion of yourself is the most important one. And the quote that I love from Betty Friedan, which I have at the beginning of my book, Betty wrote the Feminine Mystique in 1963. And she
Mhm.
said, "Who knows what women can be when they're finally free to be themselves?" So think of it as having the audacity to be the bad bitch that you are.
I love it. Yeah, take it as a challenge. It's awesome. So, Lisa, this has been such a pleasure. If you had one key takeaway or just piece of wisdom that you wanted to leave with the audience today, what would that be?
A woman steps into her full power, not when she is finally given permission to do so, but when she realizes she never needed permission in the first place.
Mm.
Stop asking for permission to do what you want, to achieve what you want, to be who you are, and just be the most badass version of you.
Awesome. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us, and just talking about so many important points today for women entrepreneurs. This has been just such an awesome conversation. And on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone here today, we are just so thankful that you joined us.
Thank you. And for anyone who is interested in tuning into more, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be doing a number of LinkedIn lives this week with other bad bitches in the network. And then make sure to head over to badbitchempire.com. I have a newsletter that goes out every week. And of course, grab the Bad Bitch Business Bible.
Yep. Awesome. We have the link to Bad Bitch Empire and to the book on Amazon in the chat. So make sure to check those out and we'll follow up with those as well. And to our audience, we would love for you to join us again for upcoming webinars, which you can view using that upcoming events link in the chat. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.